The silence in the alien command center broke when alarms started screaming across every monitoring station throughout the Stellar Federation fleet. Ambassador Nix could not believe what his sensors were telling him about the small human research outpost they had been observing for weeks. Down on Outpost 7, 8-year-old Ben Carter was supposed to be in the recreation area with the other children, while their parents handled the boring diplomatic stuff with the aliens. But Ben had never been good at staying where adults told him to stay, especially when there were so many interesting things to explore in the restricted sections of the station. The honey badger named Brutus had escaped from the Earth Fauna Preservation Lab 3 days ago, and nobody could figure out how he kept getting past the electronic locks and containment fields. What they did not know was that Ben had been visiting Brutus every night, bringing him treats and learning that the honey badger was much smarter than anyone realized. When the Federation ships arrived with their impressive displays of advanced technology and formal diplomatic protocols, all the adults rushed to the main conference room to witness this historic first contact between humans and the Stellar Federation, leaving the children supposedly supervised by automated systems that Ben had already figured out how to bypass weeks ago. Ben found Brutus in one of the maintenance tunnels where the honey badger was systematically chewing through fiber optic cables that controlled the station's communication array, and instead of stopping him, Ben became fascinated by how the pretty lights changed colors every time Brutus bit through another cable. The alien monitoring systems detected massive power fluctuations throughout the human outpost, but Ambassador Nix assumed this was some primitive defensive response to their presence. He ordered his technical teams to begin their standard first contact procedures, unaware that a human child and a honey badger were about to teach the galaxy's most advanced civilization a lesson in chaos theory. Ben discovered that touching certain panels made interesting beeping sounds, and when he pressed his small hands against what looked like a colorful crystal display, the entire alien quantum encryption network crashed in ways that Federation scientists would spend years trying to understand. Brutus had meanwhile worked his way into the alien technology storage area that the Federation had set up as a secure staging ground for their cultural exchange gifts. The honey badger's legendary persistence and complete lack of fear made him treat the advanced alien devices like particularly stubborn nuts that needed to be cracked open. The first indication that something was seriously wrong came when Ambassador Nix lost contact with his landing party. Then his backup communication systems failed, followed by his tertiary emergency networks, and finally even his personal communicator started making sounds that no Federation device had ever been programmed to make. Security teams rushed toward the source of the disruptions, only to find a small human child sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by the scattered components of a quantum field generator, asking innocent questions about why the pretty purple light stopped working when he touched the shiny parts. Brutus had discovered that alien containment fields made excellent scratching posts, and his claws were systematically shredding through energy barriers that were supposed to be impenetrable, while making what could only be described as pleased grunting sounds every time another expensive piece of Federation technology sparked and died. The aliens had prepared for every possible scenario in their first contact protocols except for opponents who showed no fear, followed no logical behavioral patterns, and seemed to instinctively find the weak points in every system they encountered. Ben looked up at the towering alien security officers with bright, curious eyes and asked if they wanted to see the neat trick he had learned about making their force fields change colors, while Brutus emerged from a ventilation shaft, carrying what appeared to be a crucial component from their primary power distribution system. Ambassador Nix watched his carefully planned first contact mission dissolve into complete chaos as a human child and a small Earth mammal accomplished in minutes what entire enemy fleets had failed to do in decades of warfare. The Federation's most advanced technology was being systematically disabled by curiosity and stubbornness. The honey badger had somehow accessed the aliens' food preparation systems and was methodically destroying their emergency rations while making satisfied eating noises, completely ignoring the energy weapons pointed at him, which the aliens discovered were useless anyway since their targeting systems had been crashed by Ben's enthusiastic exploration of their weapon control interfaces. Federation emergency protocols had no provisions for dealing with opponents who treated their most sophisticated defenses as interesting toys, and their psychological warfare techniques were completely ineffective against a species that seemed to approach danger with genuine excitement rather than appropriate caution. Ben found a communications panel that was still partially functional and started pressing buttons randomly while asking the increasingly panicked aliens if they knew any fun games he could play with their computers, each button press causing cascading failures throughout systems that had taken centuries to develop. The final straw came when Brutus discovered the Federation's ceremonial crystal matrix that served as the symbolic heart of their diplomatic mission. The honey badger's determined chewing reduced the priceless artifact to expensive glittering fragments while Ben applauded and asked if they had any more pretty crystals he could touch. Ambassador Nix found himself faced with a choice no Federation officer had ever confronted. He could either escalate to lethal force against a human child and his animal companion, risking the complete breakdown of first contact protocols, or he could retreat and try to explain to the Federation Council how their most advanced technology had been defeated by what appeared to be innocent curiosity and wildlife. The decision became academic when their main ship's navigation systems crashed after Ben somehow convinced the automated systems that the Federation fleet was actually a collection of space debris that needed to be cleared away from the outposts' flight paths as Federation ships limped away from what was supposed to be a simple first contact mission. Ambassador Nix transmitted the first of what would become thousands of reports, warning other galactic civilizations about the unprecedented threat posed by human children and their animal companions. Ben waved goodbye from the observation deck while Brutus sat beside him, both completely unaware that they had just fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy by proving that advanced technology was no match for fearless curiosity and the legendary persistence of Earth's wildlife. The Federation's retreat marked the beginning of a new era in galactic relations, though it would take time for other civilizations to understand that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their military might, but their children's boundless capacity for exploration, combined with the unstoppable determination of creatures that evolution had designed never to give up. 3 weeks after the Federation incident, the Crimson Empire's intelligence networks were buzzing with reports that seemed too ridiculous to believe. General Voss dismissed the early warnings as propaganda until his own reconnaissance drones captured footage of the impossible partnership in action on New Terra Colony. Ben Carter had adapted to his newfound fame with the same cheerful acceptance he showed toward everything else in his young life, treating the constant stream of alien visitors like an extended playdate, while Brutus had claimed the colony's maintenance systems as his personal territory and defended them with typical honey badger enthusiasm. The Crimson Empire prided itself on technological superiority and military precision. Their war machines were designed to intimidate civilizations into submission before the first shot was fired. But General Voss had not accounted for opponents who were genuinely excited to see giant robots instead of being properly terrified. When the Empire's advanced scouts reported that the human colony's defensive systems appeared to be malfunctioning, Voss saw an opportunity to demonstrate Imperial might where the Federation had failed. His massive dreadnoughts descended through New Terra's atmosphere, with weapons charged and shields at maximum power. Ben spotted the approaching ships from his bedroom window and ran outside to get a better look at the amazing flying machines. His parents shouted warnings about staying indoors, but Ben had never seen spacecraft that big before, and his curiosity was stronger than any fear response his species might have evolved. Brutus had been busy digging new tunnels throughout the colony's underground infrastructure when the vibrations from the Imperial landing craft disturbed his work. The honey badger emerged from a storm drain to investigate these noisy intruders, and immediately began planning how to make them stop making so much racket. The Empire's psychological warfare specialists had prepared holographic displays designed to showcase Imperial might and convince primitive species to surrender without resistance. But their careful planning fell apart when Ben walked right up to their war machines and asked if he could climb inside to see how they worked. General Voss watched from his command ship as his ground forces encountered something their training had never covered: a human child who showed no fear of weapons designed to level cities, and whose genuine fascination with Imperial technology was somehow more unsettling than any military resistance they had ever faced. Brutus, meanwhile, had discovered that the Empire's massive war mechs had exposed power cables running along their legs, and the honey badger's evolutionary programming told him that anything that looked like it needed chewing probably did. So he set to work with characteristic determination. Ben's natural human ability to form social connections manifested as he began asking the Imperial soldiers about their families, their home planets, and whether they had ever seen a honey badger before. Within minutes, he had half the landing force showing him pictures of their offspring and explaining how their weapon systems worked. The first sign that the situation was spiraling beyond Imperial control came when one of their primary assault mechs suddenly toppled over as Brutus finished chewing through its main power distribution system. The honey badger emerged from beneath the fallen machine with what might have been a satisfied expression. Imperial doctrine called for overwhelming force in response to resistance. But General Voss found himself in the unprecedented position of ordering weapons fire on a small boy who was currently sitting in the cockpit of one of their own war machines, asking delighted questions about what all the buttons did. Ben had somehow convinced the mech's automated systems that he was an authorized operator, and his innocent button pushing was causing weapon systems to activate randomly, while defense protocols cycled through settings that created spectacular light shows across the colony's sky. Brutus had discovered that Imperial armor plating made excellent scratching surfaces and was systematically working his way through their entire landing force, leaving a trail of disabled war machines and increasingly frustrated soldiers who could not figure out how to stop a creature that ignored their most powerful weapons. The partnership operated on an instinctive level that baffled Imperial tacticians. Where Ben's curiosity led him into restricted areas, Brutus cleared obstacles. Where the honey badger's destruction created chaos, Ben's charm prevented retaliation from soldiers who found themselves genuinely fond of the fearless human child Imperial. Communication networks crashed when Ben found their command frequency and began broadcasting excited commentary about everything he was seeing, while Brutus somehow accessed their supply depot and was methodically destroying their ration stores with focused determination. General Voss realized his forces were not fighting an enemy in any conventional sense. They were dealing with a natural disaster in the form of unstoppable curiosity, combined with equally unstoppable persistence, and his military academy training had no solutions for opponents who operated outside all known tactical parameters. The situation reached critical mass when Ben asked if he could meet the general's pet battle beast, a ceremonial creature that the Empire used to intimidate conquered populations. While Brutus simultaneously discovered the Imperial flagship's docking bay and began exploring what looked like a very large mechanical nest, Imperial retreat protocols were designed for military defeat, not for situations where their own technology was being systematically dismantled by opponents who showed no malicious intent. General Voss found himself ordering withdrawal, while a human child waved goodbye, and a honey badger somehow activated their distress beacon to broadcast what sounded like territorial marking calls. The Crimson Empire's military reputation never recovered from the Battle of New Terra. As historians would later call it, their withdrawal from human space marked the second major galactic power to discover that Earth's wildlife and human children represented a threat category that existed outside all previous military understanding. As Imperial ships limped away from New Terra, General Voss transmitted classified warnings to every military commander in the galaxy, advising them that humanity possessed weapons more dangerous than antimatter bombs or quantum disruption fields. The boundless curiosity of their offspring, and the legendary stubbornness of their planetary fauna Ben and Brutus, watched the pretty lights of the retreating Imperial fleet disappear into hyperspace, completely unaware that they had just redefined military strategy throughout civilized space by proving that the most advanced weapons in the galaxy were no match for a fearless child and a creature that refused to acknowledge the concept of surrender. The partnership had evolved beyond friendship into something that transcended species barriers. Ben's human adaptability and Brutus's honey badger determination created a force that operated on principles alien civilizations could observe, but never fully understand or counter. Emergency sessions were being called across the galaxy as news of the human badger incidents reached the highest levels of civilized space. The Zephyrian Collective's Science Directorate received authorization to deploy their most advanced research teams to study what military forces could not defeat. Chief Scientist Kara had built her reputation on solving impossible xenobiological puzzles, but the data streaming in from Federation and Imperial sources presented challenges that defied everything the collective knew about behavioral patterns, evolutionary development, and technological interaction. The research fleet arrived at the outer edges of human space with instruments designed to monitor, analyze, and categorize any form of life in the galaxy. Their sensors could detect quantum fluctuations in alien brain chemistry and predict behavioral responses with 97% accuracy, but Ben Carter and Brutus were about to render their most sophisticated equipment useless. Ben had been following the news reports about alien visitors with the same enthusiasm he showed for everything else, and when his parents explained that scientists from space were coming to study humans, he immediately began planning how to help them with their research by showing them all the cool things he and Brutus had discovered. The honey badger had established a complex network of tunnels throughout New Terra's infrastructure and had begun what could only be described as territorial expansion, systematically exploring every restricted area on the colony, while leaving a trail of disabled security systems and frustrated maintenance crews when the Zephyrian research vessels entered orbit. Their first surprise came from Ben's attempts to communicate with them, using a jury-rigged radio system he had built from salvaged alien components. The boys' cheerful greetings crashed their language processing computers because he was somehow speaking fragments of languages that should have been impossible for humans to learn. Brutus sensed the approaching ships through vibrations in the colony's structure and began preparing his domain for visitors, which involved systematically disabling any system that might restrict his movement, including several that the colonists had not realized were connected to their primary life support grid. Collective's behavioral prediction algorithms went into cascade failure when Ben demonstrated learning capabilities that exceeded their models for advanced adult specimens. The boy absorbed alien mathematical concepts during casual conversation and then immediately applied them to improvised engineering projects that should have required decades of specialized training. Dr. Kara's first direct encounter with the partnership occurred when Ben invited her research team to see his and Brutus's secret base, which turned out to be a sprawling complex of tunnels, chambers, and interconnected systems that the honey badger had carved throughout the colony's foundation. The collective's xenobiologists had prepared detailed studies on Earth mammals, but their research had focused on honey badgers in natural habitats. They had not anticipated how the species might adapt when exposed to advanced technology and unlimited access to complex systems to explore and modify. Ben gave the alien scientists a guided tour that revealed the true scope of his capabilities. He had somehow integrated salvaged alien technology with human systems and honey badger modifications to create hybrid devices that operated on principles no single species should have been able to understand. Brutus treated the research team's equipment as an interesting addition to his territory and began systematically investigating every device they brought. The honey badger's exploration methods involved teeth, claws, and a complete disregard for safety protocols, which resulted in spectacular failures of instruments worth more than most planetary economies. The partnership's most unsettling aspect became apparent when Ben began asking questions that revealed he had intuited connections between alien technologies that the collective's best scientists had missed. His innocent curiosity was uncovering design flaws and system vulnerabilities that should have required centuries of specialized study to discover. Dr. Kara realized that human children might represent an evolutionary adaptation that other species had never developed. The ability to rapidly assimilate and improve upon any technology they encountered, combined with the fearlessness necessary to experiment with systems that more cautious beings would never dare to touch. Brutus had meanwhile gained access to the research ship's ventilation systems and was conducting his own investigation of alien technology from the inside. His progress could be tracked by the systematic failure of ship systems as he chewed through components that looked interesting or blocked his preferred travel routes. The collective's research station became a testing ground where every day brought new impossibilities. Ben would cheerfully accept offers to examine alien devices while asking innocent questions that revealed critical information about their construction and capabilities, while Brutus explored restricted areas that were supposed to be absolutely secure. Emergency reports flooded back to Zephyrian space as the research team's equipment suffered daily casualties to honey badger investigation and human curiosity. Replacement instruments sent from the collective's advanced laboratories lasted hours or days before succumbing to the partnership's unconscious but systematic destruction of anything they found interesting. The psychological impact on alien researchers was as significant as the technological losses. Trained scientists found themselves genuinely caring about Ben's well-being, while simultaneously fearing what he might accidentally discover next, and developing grudging respect for Brutus's problem-solving abilities, even as he destroyed their life's work. Kara's final report to the Collective Council contained recommendations that sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. Immediate establishment of peaceful relations with humanity, permanent monitoring to prevent other species from attempting to weaponize human children, and strict protocols to prevent honey badgers from gaining access to interstellar transportation. The Zephyrian Collective's withdrawal from human space marked the third major galactic power to acknowledge that conventional scientific methods were inadequate for understanding humanity's most dangerous citizens. Their departure was accompanied by warnings, broadcast to every civilized system, about the unprecedented threat posed by human developmental capabilities. Ben waved goodbye to his new scientist friends while showing off the improved communication array he had built using parts from their abandoned research equipment, completely unaware that his innocent questions and enthusiastic experimentation had revolutionized galactic understanding of technological development and species interaction. The galaxy's academic institutions began developing new fields of study dedicated to human behavioral patterns, but their research was hampered by the uncomfortable realization that the subjects they wanted to study were more capable of understanding their research methods than they were of understanding their subjects. Across civilized space, parents of all species began telling cautionary tales about the day their greatest scientists met a human child and his animal companion, and discovered that intelligence, wisdom, and advanced education were no match for fearless curiosity and the relentless determination of creatures that evolution had designed never to quit. Deep in the lawless sectors where civilized governments feared to patrol, Crime Lord Rex was building an empire based on acquiring and controlling the galaxy's most dangerous weapons. When reports reached his network about a human child and honey badger that had defeated 3 major galactic powers, he saw an opportunity that his competitors had missed. The Shadow Syndicate specialized in capturing creatures and technologies that governments claimed were impossible to control. Their hunting teams had successfully acquired quantum phoenixes, psionic crystals, and living starship cores, so Rex was confident that superior numbers and advanced capture technology would succeed where military forces had failed Ben. His family had relocated to Mining Station Alpha 7 after New Terra became too crowded with alien visitors. Researchers and diplomats, the remote asteroid facility, seemed like the perfect place for a normal childhood. But Ben had never been particularly interested in normal, and Brutus had already begun exploring the mining tunnels with characteristic enthusiasm. Rex's intelligence network reported that the targets were isolated on a small mining facility with minimal defenses, the perfect opportunity to demonstrate syndicate capabilities while acquiring assets that could be sold to the highest bidder or used to intimidate potential rivals. The hunting fleet approached Mining Station Alpha 7 with confidence earned through years of successful operations. Their ships carried containment systems designed for the galaxy's most dangerous creatures, energy nets that could hold plasma beings, and stasis fields that had captured entities from higher dimensional planes. Ben spotted the approaching ships through his bedroom window in the family quarters and immediately became excited about having more visitors. He had been getting lonely since the scientists left, and the mining crews were too busy with their work to appreciate his improvements to their equipment. Brutus had been systematically exploring the asteroid's tunnel system and had discovered that mining operations created vibrations that were perfect for echolocation. The honey badger had mapped every passage, chamber, and hidden space in the facility, including several areas that the mining crews did not know existed. The syndicate's first mistake was assuming that their targets would behave like normal prey. Rex's hunting teams were prepared for creatures that would hide, run, or fight when cornered, but they had no protocols for opponents who approached capture attempts with genuine curiosity about the hunting equipment being used against them. Ben walked directly up to the first wave of hunters and began asking fascinated questions about their energy nets, containment pods, and stasis generators, while the syndicate operatives struggled with orders to capture someone who seemed genuinely delighted to meet them and wanted to know if their equipment came in different colors. The mining station's automated systems had been designed to prevent industrial accidents, and when Brutus began his systematic exploration of the hunter's equipment, the safety protocols interpreted his activities as potential hazards that needed to be contained. which resulted in mining lasers, excavation tools, and/or processing systems treating the Syndicate ships as dangerous obstacles. Rex watched from his command vessel as his carefully planned operation dissolved into chaos when a human child convinced his own hunting team to give him a tour of their equipment while explaining how it worked, and a honey badger somehow accessed the mining station's industrial controls to turn heavy machinery against the hunters. The Syndicate's advanced capture technology proved useless against opponents who treated it as educational toys. Ben's innocent questions about what happens if I touch this part were inevitably followed by system failures as he unconsciously found the critical vulnerabilities in devices that had taken years to perfect. Brutus had discovered that the hunting ships contained interesting new tunnel systems in the form of ventilation ducts and maintenance passages, and began exploring them with the same thoroughness he had shown toward the mining station, leaving a trail of disabled systems and increasingly frustrated crew members who could not figure out how to stop him. The partnership's most devastating capability became apparent when Ben learned enough about Syndicate operations, from captured hunters, to understand their organizational structure, and began asking innocent questions that revealed classified information about other criminal activities, while Brutus systematically destroyed the communication equipment they would need to warn their associates. Mining Station Alpha 7's defense systems had never been designed for combat, but when Ben convinced the facility's computers that the Syndicate ships were space debris that needed to be cleared away from the mining operations, the station's industrial lasers and cargo manipulators began treating the hunting fleet as obstacles to be removed. Rex found himself in the unprecedented position of ordering retreat while his most elite hunters were being systematically defeated by mining equipment operated by a human child who thought he was playing a fun game, and a honey badger who had somehow accessed his personal communication channels to broadcast territorial calls across all Syndicate frequencies. The criminal underworld's reputation for being able to acquire anything was shattered when news spread that the Shadow Syndicate had been routed by an 8-year-old boy and a small Earth mammal. Rival organizations began questioning whether Rex's empire was as invincible as he claimed. Emergency protocols within the Syndicate network, activated as reports, confirmed that their most advanced hunting technology had been systematically disabled by curiosity and persistence. Crime bosses throughout the galaxy began reconsidering any plans that involved human space or Earth fauna. Ben waved goodbye to the retreating Syndicate ships while sitting in the operator's chair of a mining laser that had somehow been reprogrammed to create colorful light patterns in space, completely unaware that he had just dealt a crippling blow to organized crime's confidence in their ability to control or capture anything. The mining crews returned from their shift rotation to find their facility defended by systems they had never known existed, and their youngest resident had somehow integrated their industrial equipment into a defensive network that military engineers would have needed months to design. Rex's final transmission before disappearing into the Outer Rim warned every criminal organization in the galaxy that humanity possessed something more dangerous than any weapon or defense system: the ability to turn any environment into an advantage and any technology into a tool for their protection. The Shadow Syndicate's defeat marked the first time in galactic history that organized crime had been forced to acknowledge territorial restrictions, based not on military power or political influence, but on the existence of opponents who could not be intimidated, captured, or controlled through conventional means. Across the lawless sectors, criminal enterprises began developing new policies specifically designed to avoid any contact with human children or Earth mammals, recognizing that some targets were too dangerous to pursue regardless of their potential value. The galaxy's black market networks suddenly became very interested in acquiring detailed information about Earth's ecosystem, particularly focusing on any creatures that shared honey badger's legendary persistence and apparent immunity to advanced technology. Though most concluded that it was safer to simply avoid Earth entirely, Ben and Brutus settled back into their routine on Mining Station Alpha 7, completely unaware that they had fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy's criminal underworld by proving that innocence and stubbornness were more effective than any security system ever devised. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called after 3 major powers, and 1 criminal syndicate reported defeats at the hands of the same human child and honey badger. Ambassador Sill of the Peaceful Worlds Confederation proposed what many considered a desperate solution: direct diplomatic contact to establish peaceful coexistence council. Chambers on Harmony Station buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from dozens of species gathered to address what military analysts were calling the greatest threat to galactic stability since the last interdimensional war, except this threat was an 8-year-old boy and a small Earth mammal who seemed completely unaware of their impact on civilized space. Ben was excited about visiting the big space station where all the different aliens lived and worked together. His parents had explained that important people from across the galaxy wanted to meet him, which sounded like the best field trip ever, especially since Brutus was coming along to see all the new places to explore. The security preparations for Ben and Brutus's arrival at Harmony Station were unprecedented in Council history. Engineers had spent weeks attempting to create containment protocols that would protect critical systems while allowing diplomatic access, but their planning was based on conventional threat assessment models that had already proven inadequate. Brutus had been restless during the transport journey and was eager to investigate this new territory that smelled like dozens of different species and contained mechanical systems more complex than anything he had encountered before. The honey badger's territorial instincts identified the station as an environment that needed thorough exploration and mapping to see. First diplomatic session began with formal presentations from each major galactic power explaining their encounters with the human child and his companion, but the carefully prepared speeches were interrupted when Ben raised his hand to ask why everyone seemed so worried about him and Brutus when they were just trying to be friendly. Ambassador Sill had hoped that direct communication would reveal the partnership's motivations and limitations, but Ben's responses to formal diplomatic questions demonstrated learning abilities that surpassed most adult specimens from species known for intellectual development, while his innocent curiosity about alien government structures was systematically exposing classified information about each civilization's capabilities and weaknesses. The Gay Council's attempts at establishing formal negotiation parameters collapsed when Ben began asking questions about why different species could not just share their interesting technologies and be friends, while Brutus disappeared into the station's maintenance systems and began systematically investigating every restricted area on the diplomatic facility. Harmony Station's security systems had been designed to prevent espionage, sabotage, and assassination attempts by the galaxy's most sophisticated intelligence agencies, but they had no countermeasures for a honey badger who treated locked doors, energy barriers, and classified storage areas as interesting puzzles that needed to be solved through persistent application of teeth and claws. The diplomatic corps found themselves in the surreal position of conducting high-level negotiations while receiving constant reports about system failures throughout the station, each malfunction corresponding to Brutus's progress through areas that were supposed to be absolutely secure from any form of intrusion. Ben's natural human ability to form social connections manifested as he began making friends with species that had been enemies for centuries. His innocent questions about their cultures, histories, and conflicts revealed solutions to diplomatic problems that had seemed impossible, while simultaneously demonstrating how easily their most guarded secrets could be discovered by someone with unlimited curiosity and no fear of asking uncomfortable questions. The partnership's impact on galactic diplomacy became apparent when Ben suggested that the Federation Empire and Collective should just take turns sharing their coolest inventions while their representatives should have regular play dates so they could get to know each other better. While Brutus somehow accessed the Council's private communication networks to broadcast what sounded like invitations for everyone to visit his territory. Council security protocols activated emergency containment procedures when Brutus was detected in the chambers where each species stored their most sensitive diplomatic materials. But the honey badger's exploration had already revealed intelligence about military capabilities, trade agreements, and political alliances that could have destabilized the entire galactic balance of power. The true scope of human diplomatic potential became clear when Ben absorbed governmental structures, legal frameworks, and cultural traditions from dozens of civilizations during casual conversation, then immediately began proposing reforms and improvements that addressed fundamental problems the species themselves had never recognized. Ambassador Sill realized that humanity's greatest diplomatic weapon was not their technology or military might, but their children's ability to see simple solutions to complex problems. while their animal companions provided perfect demonstrations of why those solutions needed to be implemented peacefully. So, Council's carefully planned formal negotiations were replaced by what could only be described as an extended play session where Ben showed alien diplomats how their various technologies could be combined in fun ways, while Brutus created object lessons in the consequences of not sharing nicely by systematically disabling any system that seemed designed to exclude him. Emergency sessions were called throughout the day as council members struggled to address the implications of what they were witnessing. Their most sophisticated political and military systems were being casually dismantled by opponents who approached every challenge with genuine enthusiasm and refused to acknowledge that anything was impossible. The breakthrough came when Ben asked why aliens made everything so complicated when the obvious solution was for everyone to just be nice to each other and share their cool stuff, while Brutus demonstrated the alternative by emerging from a restricted weapons storage area, carrying components that he had apparently decided were too dangerous for anyone to have council records, would later describe the day as the most significant diplomatic revolution in galactic history, when formal negotiations were replaced by a human child's tea party where representatives from warring civilizations found themselves genuinely enjoying each other's company while a honey badger served as an informally but highly effective enforcement mechanism for peaceful behavior. The sessions concluded with what became known as the Carter Accords, a set of diplomatic principles based on sharing, friendship, and the understanding that anyone who refused to play nicely would have to deal with creatures that were immune to intimidation, bribery, or force. Ben left Harmony Station with new friends from across the galaxy and an invitation to visit anytime he wanted to see their home worlds, completely unaware that he had just restructured interstellar relations around principles that sophisticated alien civilizations had somehow never considered. The Galactic Council's final resolution established Ben Carter as humanity's unofficial but universally recognized diplomatic representative, with Brutus serving as an equally unofficial but highly respected enforcer of peaceful behavior. Though most species preferred to maintain friendly relations rather than discover what the honey badger might do to civilizations that made his human friend unhappy across the galaxy, political science curricula were updated to include courses on human diplomatic methodology, focusing on the revolutionary concept that complex political problems might have simple solutions if approached with sufficient curiosity and determination to ignore conventional limitations. 6 months after the Carter Accords were signed, the galaxy looked nothing like the carefully balanced civilization that had existed before Ben Carter and Brutus accidentally redefined interstellar relations. Trade routes buzzed with peaceful exchange while former enemies competed to offer the most interesting gifts to humanity's youngest ambassador. The Galactic Defense Protocol had been completely rewritten around a single fundamental principle. Any civilization that maintained peaceful relations with humanity would receive protection from those that did not, and that protection came in the form of the most effective deterrent the galaxy had ever known. The possibility of facing more human badger teams. Ben had adapted to his role as Earth's unofficial ambassador with the same cheerful enthusiasm he showed toward everything else, treating intergalactic diplomacy like an extended playdate with friends who happened to live on different planets, while Brutus had claimed several space stations as his territory and was systematically improving their efficiency through strategic destruction of unnecessary components. Research facilities throughout civilized space were working frantically to understand Earth's ecosystem, particularly focusing on creatures that might share honey badgers' legendary persistence and fearlessness. But most xenobiologists concluded that studying Earth fauna was too dangerous after several research teams lost expensive equipment to curious squirrels and determined raccoons. The Federation had established permanent embassies in human space and stationed their finest diplomats to maintain friendly relations. Though most of their actual communication was conducted through Ben, who had an uncanny ability to translate complex political concepts into simple terms that even the most sophisticated alien minds could understand, imperial representatives had renamed their military doctrine to emphasize peaceful cooperation rather than conquest. After General Voss's classified reports convinced the War Council that opposing humanity was tactically impossible and strategically pointless, especially when friendship offered access to human technological insights without the risk of facing honey badger infiltration teams. The Zephyrian Collective had established joint research programs with human universities. Though their scientists were required to undergo extensive psychological preparation before working with human children, and all research facilities were equipped with honey badger-proof containment systems for their more sensitive equipment. Trade agreements flourished as species competed to offer the most interesting technologies and cultural exchanges. But the real revolution was happening in education systems across the galaxy, as alien children began learning human problem-solving methods and developing their own versions of fearless curiosity. Ben's parents had officially become Earth's diplomatic representatives, though their primary responsibility was making sure Ben got enough sleep and ate his vegetables between interstellar peace negotiations, while Brutus had been granted diplomatic immunity and unlimited access to any facility he wanted to explore, which most civilizations preferred to offering him restricted areas that he would inevitably explore anyway. The Shadow Syndicate had completely restructured their operations to avoid any contact with human space, and Rex had established strict protocols prohibiting his crews from engaging in criminal activities within 50 light-years of any system containing human children or Earth fauna. Though rumors persisted about entire criminal enterprises being shut down by encounters with escaped hamsters, and Curious Cat's academic institutions across the galaxy had established new departments dedicated to studying human developmental patterns. But their research was complicated by the discovery that human children seemed to learn faster when they were being studied, leading to a cascade of technological breakthroughs that no one could fully explain. The most significant change was happening at the species level, as alien parents began encouraging their offspring to ask more questions, explore their environments more thoroughly, and approach problems with what educators were calling human-style fearlessness, though most were careful to avoid exposing their children to honey badgers until they were psychologically prepared. Emergency response protocols throughout civilized space now included specific procedures for handling situations involving human children and Earth mammals, with the understanding that conventional solutions were likely to fail, and that the best approach was usually to ask politely if there was anything the humans needed, and then wait for them to solve the problem themselves. Ben had established regular video conferences with alien children from across the galaxy, teaching them games that inevitably involved building things, taking them apart to see how they worked, and finding creative uses for technology that their parent species had never considered, while Brutus served as a living demonstration that anything was possible if you refused to give up. The honey badger had become something of a legend among alien security forces, who traded stories about his ability to find weaknesses in any system and his complete immunity to conventional deterrents, but also about his apparent protective instincts toward Ben and his willingness to cooperate with anyone who treated his human-friend-kindly trade networks had evolved beyond simple resource exchange to include cultural programs where alien families could visit Earth to observe human child-rearing practices. Though these visits required extensive preparation and honey badger awareness training for the safety of both the visitors and their expensive equipment. The most profound change was philosophical, as civilizations that had spent millennia developing increasingly complex solutions to political and technological problems began reconsidering whether simpler approaches might be more effective, especially if those approaches were implemented by beings who refused to acknowledge that anything was impossible. Ben's influence extended beyond diplomacy into scientific research, as his innocent questions during facility tours continued to reveal design flaws and improvement opportunities that professional engineers had missed, leading to technological advances that were being shared freely between species as part of the new cooperative framework. The Carter Documentation Project had been established to record and analyze every interaction between Ben, Brutus, and alien civilizations. But the research teams discovered that their subjects learned from being observed and began adapting their techniques in real time, making it impossible to predict what they might accomplish next. Military academies throughout the galaxy had added courses on asymmetric threats and unconventional warfare, though most instructors concluded that the best defense against human badger tactics was maintaining friendly relations and hoping that such teams remained on your side. The Galactic Communications Network buzzed with daily reports of Ben's latest diplomatic breakthroughs and Brutus's newest territorial acquisitions, But the real story was the gradual transformation of interstellar civilization from a collection of competing powers into something resembling a vast extended family with a human child as its unofficial leader. Mining operations on asteroids throughout human space had become tourist destinations where alien visitors could observe honey badger tunnel systems and learn about the integration of biological instincts with advanced technology. Though most facilities required extensive insurance coverage for equipment damage, the long-term implications were still being calculated by strategic planners across the galaxy, but preliminary analyses suggested that humanity had accidentally created the most stable interstellar civilization in recorded history, simply by approaching every challenge with curiosity rather than caution and refusing to accept that any problem was too difficult to solve. Ben Carter remained completely unaware of his historical significance, treating his role in galactic transformation with the same cheerful acceptance he showed toward everything else, while Brutus continued his systematic exploration of the universe with the patient determination that had made honey badgers the most respected species in known space. The new galactic order operated on principles that seemed impossible to sophisticated alien minds, but worked perfectly in practice, proving that the most advanced political achievement in the history of civilization was teaching everyone to share their toys and play nicely together, with the understanding that those who refused would have to answer to creatures that evolution had designed never to back down from any challenge.